Welcome to a fireside chat about self-employment, where you can ask all your questions about being self-employed in tech. I hope it will also be interesting for people who aren't developers, because I'm not a developer myself yet. So just real quick, my name is Kai. My pronouns are they, them. I went freelance about more than 8 years ago as a copywriter and then a startup consultant. And I have since lived and had businesses in 3 countries, in Austria, then in the UK, and now in Germany. So I've done the whole rigmarole in 3 different countries at this point. The idea for this live stream came about because people from my Class Central cohort asked questions about going freelance and how to do it. And it was a lot of questions. And I kind of got too lazy to type. And I said, hey, why don't we do this? And you can ask all your questions. And then I asked Julia to join me because she's got experience with self-employment in the US. And I'm going to bring her in now. Hi, Julia.
Hi, Kai.
And welcome.
I'm Julia. As Kai said, I live in the US. I live outside Seattle. So tech is sort of my third career. And when I changed careers into tech, I initially started freelancing just as a way to kind of get like something on my resume while I looked for a full-time position. But I really love freelancing, and I've found a lot of really interesting work. And the flexibility has been really good for me and my family. So I have stuck with it, and I've been freelancing now for about, I guess, almost 3 years in the US. What else should I say?
I don't know. No one's hear it, I think. Okay. But that's fine. Cool. It'll be recorded, I guess. It's interesting because you said that you started freelancing while you were looking for full-time employment. A lot of people think that, or kind of want freelancing to be like the sort of easy, fast way into getting money, which I usually tend to say, no, that's not the way. But pretty much you started to tide yourself over. How did that work out for you?
Well, it wasn't so much about the money exactly as like I wanted to have something on my resume beyond a boot camp. And as I was beginning to interview for a few full-time positions and apply to a lot of them and not get any response, I was like, okay, I need something. So I started looking for freelance developer gigs, and I way underbid on my first one, but I got it because I really underbid. And it turned out to be, that was something I got on Upwork, and it turned out to be just kind of a nightmare of a project, but it was a tremendous learning opportunity for me in, learning technology, learning how to work with other developers, learning how to work with a non-technical founder, and also learning about like what it is actually like to work as a freelancer. And you're not going to make very much money when you first start. It's kind of the nature of it.
Yeah.
But you gain confidence pretty darn fast. Although I will also say that I've given a talk. I'm sorry, my Roomba is running upstairs.
Oh, I was wondering what that was. I thought, was that your mic?
No, sorry.
That's okay.
If I can stop it.
It's fine. Now that we know what it is, it's fine. Yeah. We'll just.
I've done a talk for the boot camp that I went to, called "Self-Knowledge is a Freelancer, or Self-Knowledge is a Consultant Superpower." One thing about working in consulting, freelancing, whatever you want to call it, is that you really have to have a pretty strong sense of self and like a sense of self-preservation, and also a sense of like what you bring to the table that's different, because you have to be able to communicate to people why it's worth working with you. But you also need to be able to sort of reassure yourself that when things don't go well, that like it's not you. You know,
Yeah.
you can learn from the experience, but like you are not the problem. And I think that can be hard for a lot of people, especially early career. And I would guess, like I said, like tech is my third career path. I feel like if I hadn't had all of the work experience that I had previously in these other areas, it would be a lot harder for me to kind of like have that confidence working in tech as a freelancer.
Mm.
Yeah. So, um, in terms though of like making, you know, it being a way to make money quickly, like, yeah, you'll make a little money. Like if you are really desperate for cash, but it's not likely to really like pay the bills.
The thing you have to consider that people don't, I think, is that it's not just you go on Upwork and you just say, oh, I'll do this job, and you do it and then you get money for it. There's a lot of overhead. There's setting
Right.
up your business. There's figuring out how things work in your country. Even like I've never actually gotten work off Upwork or Fiverr, but I think even there, you, as you said, you bid and you have to go back and forth with people. This is all time that no one's going to pay you for.
It's time. And that is the only job I've ever gotten from one of those platforms. Once I had that resume line, it got to be a lot easier to kind of get in the door other places, I think.
I think I was incredibly lucky that I didn't have. Sorry, yeah.
Oh, one thing I will say in terms of like overhead is I got into that position. Oh no, actually this was more recently. I got a cool new client, really interesting space I hadn't worked in before. I had to install Unity on my computer, and I was running on like a little 2017, 2018 MacBook. And the thing practically caught fire. And it was like, oh shoot, like I gotta get a new computer ASAP. And that's on you. Like,
Yeah.
and you don't want to turn down a job because you're gonna have to run Docker. But like if you can't support it on the system that you have, there's nobody who's gonna be like, oh, that's cool, like take a month while you wait for
while you figure things out.
Yeah, like I had to go to the Apple store and be like, I need a computer now.
Please.
And I wound up having to get a more expensive computer than I would have, than like what I would have gotten. And those are the kind of things that like it's a good long-term investment, but like
in the short term it throws you.
Also,
yeah,
like almost a month of pay.
Wow.
So
as for like getting started, because that's what a lot of people are asking about. You found some work on Upwork, and then that was your first resume line. I was lucky that I didn't have to resort to the. I have a special hatred of Fiverr and Upwork and all these places, and I will get to that later. But I didn't have to resort to that because I was volunteering at TEDx Vienna. So that just like the TED conference, you have various TEDx conferences in various cities and regions, and I was volunteering there and making connections, and then someone I worked with there recommended me to what has essentially become my longest standing client now. So I started working with them 8+ years ago, and I still work with them now. And that was my in. And from then on, every other, aside from one, So almost every other job that I've had since then, gig, or whatever you want to call it, freelance gig, has been through word of mouth. So basically, people I work with recommending me to other people that they know in the tech or startup community, which is also why all of my clients have been in Austria, because that's where word of mouth has spread about what I can do. And also because my niche is kind of not just being a tech content specialist, but also the fact that I speak German and English is really practical for a lot of people in this area, because they're like, oh, we would like to talk to you in German, but please write it in English. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So this also goes in what you said before about figuring out where you sit and what you can do. Like I figured out at some point, and I didn't necessarily figure this out because I was sat down. I was like, okay, so what is my brand? Like I am a tech content specialist, and my niche is that I speak German and English, and I can translate tech into simpler words. No, that I realized that because that's why people came to me, and that's what they were telling me.
Yeah.
And that is a growth process. That doesn't, to, at least in my experience, that you can't just like sit down day one, okay, I'm going to be self-employed, day two, figure out what you're going to do. Like
Right.
day three, set up your website, day four, get clients. Sadly, this is not
right.
day five, rake in money. But
No.
it's like, yeah, so for me, because I am an outgoing and bubbly person, the easiest way was to make connections, go and network with people. That was also a long time before the pandemic. So I was involved in a co-working space in Vienna. I would go to meetups, even when I like wasn't necessarily familiar with the tech or whatever. I'd go to meetups, but I also go to like freelancer specific meetups, and started doing like giving little talks here and there, and that has also got me clients. So just being present. Yes, Ramon, co-working space in, it says co-working space in Vienna. That was Sector 5, and that is also where Ramon and I met. And we miss it muchly because it is now defunct, but it was a great place for things like that. And then through the co-working space, I started getting clients, and my clients kept referring me to other people. And then down the road, the person who ran the co-working space was like, hey, do you want to maybe like start consulting in the startup incubator we are running right now? And I was like, I've never consulted before. Imposter syndrome kicked in. And I was like, no, hold on, Kai, you've been doing this. You've just not been calling it consulting.
Right.
And so I kind of just eased myself into that. I was really lucky in that I met the right people at the right time, that people liked my work. And I guess that I did good work isn't luck. That was just, I did good work.
Yeah. No, I think that's really important to kind of have that perspective that like you don't have to know from day one like what's going to set you apart,
and it changes
like,
all the time.
It will change, but like you do want to kind of be reflecting on it as you grow. For me, ultimately, like the niche that I have gotten into is developer. I don't know. Sometimes I call it developer education. Some people call it developer marketing. Some people call it developer engagement. But it's so my last career was as an English teacher, and so what I do now is I work with like API SaaS companies, mostly like developer tools, and I build sample applications, or I work with their sample applications and then write content that explains it, that, you know, maybe come up with a new unique use case and kind of walk through like, here are the details of how I implemented this. So it's something that like I did need that like pure dev experience. That was an important part of like what's gotten me to where I am. But ultimately, like it turns out there are a lot of people who are developers. There are fewer people who are competent developers and also like get the content creation thing, the writing piece. And that was, I don't know, I'm a little scattered, but that was something that kind of like you, like I found my way into that through connections. The boot camp that I attended is based out of Portland, Oregon, and I have two of my early freelance jobs were with people who were like on the advisory board for that boot camp. And, you know, one of them was like a serial startup guy. And I got involved doing some, like, it was like this super technical, like explaining DNS attacks and like really, really in depth, like back end kind of stuff, which I was like, I don't know anything about this. Like, are you sure you want? But he was like, yeah, I need somebody who can write and like write on a deadline and write to specs that we provide. And then the other one was the agency where I'm kind of like half in-house now, which is really more aimed at like the developer tools. He was also somebody who was involved like with the advisory board. And so, you know, they would post messages like on our bootcamp Discord, like, hey, does anybody want to, you know, try just like doing this thing? And I know that there were other people who were like, this isn't worth my time. Like, it's not going to pay enough for the amount of time I have to put in. Like, I'm not going to engage with this. But for me, because I have the writing skills and the research skills to be able to turn stuff out pretty quickly. It was like, okay, this is something that I can do that, like, you know, it's not paying a whole lot per hour, at least at the beginning, but it was something that I could do and feel good about. And like, apparently what I was doing was good enough that, you know, people kept coming back.
I think building your portfolio is definitely like I'm first of all, hi Yushi, welcome. I don't think you missed too much. I'm seeing all the questions in the chat. I am saving them for later, for when they'll fit in. Thank you. Keep them coming. I want to say that like I'm the first person to be, don't undersell yourself, don't work for too cheap, but also you got to build your portfolio in some way,
right? Especially at the beginning.
Open source is a great way to do that. Build your portfolio doing open source, and then you can get jobs. First of all, you make connections, you network, and then you can also, when you apply for freelance gigs, whether it's on Fiverr or whether you're just meeting someone, you can be like, hey, I've done this, and this. Other things you can do, volunteering, which I guess is the same as open source, but volunteering is a bit wider. But just like I did with TEDx Vienna, there were also people that were developers volunteering, there were all kinds of people volunteering. Find something local to you if you want. And that way you build your portfolio, you build your CV, and you make connections as well. So I think that is incredibly important, while also not underselling yourself. Like I would do maybe 2 or 3 things for free or cheap at the beginning, and then be like, okay.
And then, and be selective about them. Like, you don't want it to be something that's like, well, you know, this is not going to pay me that much.
No, it's got to be good.
It's like easy and like whatever. It's a throw.
No, it's you got to get something out of it.
Yeah, you want them to be meaningful learning experiences, because that's going to position you to move up to the next level. Like building your buddy's WordPress site. Like,
no, you know, not. I haven't paid.
to do.
Ramon is just now asking. I hear a lot from folks to not work for free. Just like I said as well, how do I consolidate that with volunteering open source? So personally, I think volunteering and open source, those have to be things that do something in the world. Like I would not volunteer my time for a company that has money to pay me, but they just don't wanna. But if you like I said, like TEDx, I mean, Ramon knows what TEDx Vienna is like. I know they can't pay me, and it's great work, and it's a great experience, and it's fun. So I'm going to do that. And same with open source. I mean, I don't know enough about open source. I'm sure there are projects that are maybe less good for the world, kind of worthwhile feeling. Probably, I assume so. But my personal way to go about this is to be like, if I do this, is it gonna make me feel good about myself and the work that I've done, and also add to my portfolio? And is my work gonna help these people? So
You want it to be something that you can be proud of telling people you did, right? Like that if, you know, if somebody questions like, oh, you worked on this, like, was that paid? If you say no, like you want it to be
also, no one's asked me that.
No, I mean, nobody's ever asked me that either. And I did early on, I did work on one project. It was funded by like the local chamber of commerce. And it was we were building what was supposed to be like a neighborhood small business focused version of Yelp.
You know, those people aren't swimming in money, you know?
Right, exactly. It was like, you know what? And it was during the pandemic, and it was like, you know, I know that this is technically like for profit, but like, I don't really care. Like,
yeah, no,
I'm happy to work on this for free.
Yeah, that's how I see that as well.
It takes off, like it'll have meaningful benefits for the community.
What I also sometimes do is I have bartered in my life, even later on in my career as an established freelancer. I have bartered for osteopathy treatments, for various other things. I think that's a perfectly fine way to go about this. I don't know if it counts as tax evasion. I don't know. It's just
I know in the US,
yeah. So like if you're but basically I'm saying, like, because you said, oh, you're doing your buddy's WordPress site, like if you're doing that and your buddy can't pay you, then barter. I'm sure your buddy does something
or
has something,
tattoo shop, and you want
exactly yeah, you know, stuff like that. So that's always
yeah, I know. I think in the US there's like a dollar limit where like if it exceeds a certain amount, then you have to declare it on your taxes. But
who's gonna know?
Don't quote me on that. I am not an accountant.
But speaking of taxes, that is something that it's just kind of like a disclaimer, like, because people might not think of these pitfalls. As far as I know, in America, it's fairly straightforward and simple. Just be like, I'm starting my business, I'm being a freelancer, and then at the end of the year, you just bear over your taxes like everyone else.
I just was me. Like, I actually didn't even form a business entity until I'd been doing it for a little while.
This is not legal in all countries. This is just right. The huge disclaimer. If you're in Austria or in Germany, you cannot just start working for yourself. You will have to go and do all the bureaucracy and deal with that. And it's excruciating. Like, I've been self-employed in Germany and Austria and in the UK, and the UK was so easy in comparison. I still weep for it. In Austria and in Germany, I need an actual tax advisor to do my end of year taxes. And I still here also need to do quarterly tax stuff that I have finally halfway understood how to do. It always is a lot of crying. Again, that goes into overhead. That is time that is not paid that I'm spending on my business. In the UK, I basically just went online. I registered. I got my tax number, and that was it. And it was easy enough that I did like a kind of a taxes for self-employed sole traders kind of course that I bought for like 400 quid once, and I could ask a few questions, and then I basically had a list of how to do my taxes, and I had a really good accounting software that actually could like send the whole thing to the HMRC as well. So it was super easy in comparison to what's done here and what's done in Austria, and like US, Canada, probably again different.
Canada, I'm pretty sure, is similar to the US. Like, you can just do it as yourself, so long as in the US, like, so long as you have a social security number, you can just report whatever income you get from business, like, as income to you, like, based on your social security number. If you want to, like, I have what's called a personal LLC, which is a limited liability corporation, and I think the C stands for something else. Limited liability something.
I don't know. Yeah.
I don't know.
We don't have them here, so yeah.
And that's just mainly about like protection from lawsuits, honestly. Like,
Yeah.
it's not really it doesn't really change anything about my taxes. It's just a way of
Liability.
separating my business assets from personal
Yeah.
assets in case of a lawsuit.
In Austria and Germany, it would change a lot about the way you have to run your business, and it would make it a lot more complicated. So a lot of people here, just like me, stick with being a sole trader because it's a whole other headache. So yeah, basically the huge warning disclaimer: wherever you are, research, figure out what things are like in your country, which steps you need to take to make things official, how to do your taxes. Will you need a tax advisor? Is it easy enough that you can do it yourself? Basically, yeah, figure that out before you get into it, and then
And
at the end
also,
of the
like,
year, you're
one
panicking.
thing
That is
I
just
have
not
run
worth it.
into is that I've run into this on the other side where I sometimes like recruit other freelancers to come work on projects through the agency that I work through now. And it's not like, sometimes the like exchange between different countries doesn't work out. Like,
Yeah.
it's actually, we've been fine, but I know one place that I had a contract, they were like, "Oh, we can't take anybody from, I don't know, whatever."
Yeah.
So,
No,
but some companies think that they can't, and they actually could.
but also some companies don't even know at all what they would have to do to,
Right.
because there's this form. So I had a US client once that went terribly wrong, but that's a different story. And I had to fill out a form for that because she was in the US and I was in the UK, and that is a cross-border
Yeah.
business thingamajig, interaction. And then you have to fill out this thing for the IRS. And she didn't even know about that. I found out because I do my research. So
Yeah.
also when you go on Upwork and Fiverr, this is something to consider if you're not in the US. These platforms are still incredibly US focused,
They
I
are
think.
definitely very US centric still.
And I guess they work better with countries that are extremely used to doing business with the US. So I think maybe India and other countries, maybe it's easier. I don't know. This is just a wild guess. I know that it isn't easy if you're in Europe, in the EU.
Yeah,
Also not in
it's
the
really
UK,
easy
so.
between like US, Canada, Mexico.
Within the EU, it's
Within the
not
EU,
super easy. You still have to do the whole reverse charge thing, which if you're in the EU and you're planning to have a business and work for businesses, look up the reverse charge thing. It's fairly simple once you figured it out and your bookkeeping, like your accounting software does it for you, but it is an extra step that you have to consider.
And it's something that, like, don't take for granted that the company who's hiring you actually knows what they're talking about.
Half the time they don't. They're like, yeah, sure, it's not a problem that you're
they're like, no,
not at all. I'm like, okay, so the P whatever form, can you send me that? And they're like, what form? What? Never have that.
Or the reverse, they'll say, oh, we absolutely can't take anyone outside the US, and it's like, I don't think so.
You said I've never done subcontracting, but Ramon is asking, does subcontracting complicate bookkeeping? I don't know. Does it?
Not for me.
Because they subcontract, the company that you work for subcontracts.
Yeah, well,
or also.
I guess I've never. Oh, I understand. So I have been a subcontractor. I have never had anybody subcontract for me.
I have also avoided that.
Yeah. So I don't know.
I was once brought in by someone else for a job, and that was already like bad enough because I didn't have direct communication with the client and things were very chaotic, and I did not like that. Yeah.
It's
okay. Ramon says that's what he meant. What did I want to say?
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. So consider how to start a business in your country. There's this thing that people say that we're like, oh, I'll just start, like I mentioned before, like I'll just start my business real quick, and then I'll have money to live, and that's not how it works. You I recommend having money on the side before you go freelance. And personally, like what I did worked really well for me, even though it was exhausting, which is I had a part-time job in PR and I started my business on the side, and then basically did the thing where like one thing, I don't know how to do this,
Yeah,
but
one
yeah,
goes up while
I did the
yeah,
thing.
yeah.
So that for me, like if you just like get yourself a steady income so you don't have to worry all the time about how to pay your rent and how to buy food. And then slowly grow your business from there. That's what I would suggest. And it's probably a good time to say, bring this up. That's Finn. It's my partner in the other room. I swear I did not solicit them for this question. Can you talk a bit on how to sell yourself without feeling icky or unsure? Because there will always be someone more skilled or experienced. So I think Julia mentioned that a bit before with like what she brought to the table was something that other devs couldn't bring, which is the experience with content. And I think even like even though imposter syndrome will tell you that there's always someone more skilled or experienced, you do bring, so everyone brings something to the table.
And like,
that
how
other
hard
people
is it
don't.
going to be for them to find that other person who might be more skilled or experienced? Like, you know, we all encounter decision fatigue, and like, I don't know, this is kind of a silly comparison, but I've been trying to schedule like flu and COVID boosters for myself and my kids this week. And it's like, the US has a terrible system. And so you just have to like keep going to all these different websites and like schedule appointments, cancel appointments, schedule appointment, cancel appointment. And it's like, eventually I get to the point where I'm like, I might be able to find something more convenient than this, but I've had it. Like, I'm just doing what I'm doing. Like, I've signed up for this and that's what I'm doing. And that's a real thing in business. Like, people do not have infinite time to find the absolutely optimally qualified person. You have to be confident that you can deliver what they need in a timely manner. And I think you have to be confident that you can improve on what's already there. And that's something that I am kind of working on building my confidence in, right? Is that like, I go, because a lot of what I do is working with companies who have really awful developer portals on their websites. Like, I spend a lot of time in crappy documentation land, and I don't need to be able to deliver the best, but I need to be able to deliver something better than what they've got. And it's it can be a little uncomfortable to say that, to be like, what you've got is not great. Like, but there are ways to do that, especially if you have a relationship with someone and it comes out organically in a conversation that like they know there are gaps, and then you can be like, yeah, here's what I noticed, like these specific things, or like, here's what I would do.
I've also learned that I don't have to, it doesn't feel like I have to sell myself. The combination of my work that is good and people can look up, others referring me and being like, go hire this person, and just being myself authentically. That's maybe
don't
maybe there's a
undervalue.
certain privilege in that. My career just took off really well after I started freelancing because I got lucky, like I said before. But I try not to like sell myself, because I think that's icky too. Like, I feel icky.
I agree. Like the whole idea,
you meet those people at networking. You meet those people at networking events where you can just tell that they're there to network. I've always approached that as just talking to people, and then if something comes out of that afterwards, then yeah. I've got more questions. This is great.
Well, and I think also don't undervalue like just being a pleasant person to work with.
Yeah. Like,
I've
Yeah.
definitely had clients where I'm like, oh my God, I never want to work with that person again. I don't want to be that. Like,
Yeah.
I try really hard to be a person that people want to keep working with.
Yeah. While also
But
being
it's not,
myself. That
but
I
well, yeah,
find that,
being
yeah.
myself, but like, I don't mean like, putting on
Yeah, airs or whatever. Nah,
airs or
I
whatever,
don't
but
do
just like,
that. Yeah.
don't be a jerk. And, that goes a
Don't
long
be a dick is always a very good, like, I think that's what Will
always good
Wheaton always
advice.
used to say, don't be a dick. We've got another question. How long did it take you to make a living from freelancing? Do you want to take that first?
I don't know if I'm a good person to answer that question because I
Yeah,
am not
same.
the primary earner in my household. Like, my partner makes a lot more money than I will ever make. And I'm also, we have 2 kids and I put a lot of time into that. So, but I mean, until I started making steady income, predictable income, I would say it took me about a year.
I have to be honest, I don't entirely remember. I think I started freelancing in August 2014 while being a part-timer doing PR for Dialogue in the Dark, and then I quit that maybe April or May. Because at that point I knew I had like a steady contract, and I think there was a second gig coming in or something, even a second contracted gig. I don't know, but that was the point where, I mean, I wasn't the sole earner, but we both didn't earn tons, so I
Yeah.
couldn't. I could also not like just rely on my partner's income. Not that I'm saying that's what he did. Sorry,
No.
if that came across weird, because like I couldn't just be like, oh, I'm just gonna see how this freelancing gig goes because my partner earns enough. It wasn't like that. It was tight.
Well, yeah. I
But
mean, I wouldn't still
I
be
feel
doing
like
it if it weren't profitable.
necessary. But like after half a year, I think it started to go really well. Also with like constantly new gigs coming in, and that's also I think approximately when I put my rates up for the first time. So what I did was with every new client, I went up with my rates, and the advice that I always give people when they start to freelance and they have to price themselves, I'm like, if you don't feel slightly uncomfortable with the number you're giving them, then it's not high enough.
Asking for enough. Yeah. Yeah.
Do I have legacy clients who probably pay a bit less than newer clients? Of course. But even there, I raise my rates. Like I haven't for a while because of COVID, but I'm raising my rates. So yeah, feel slightly uncomfortable, because what's the worst thing that's going to happen? If you're on a platform like Fiverr or Upwork, yes, someone else is going to price you out, which is, again, what leads me back to why I hate those platforms, because they create dumping prices for the whole economy
Yeah.
of whatever field you're in.
Yeah.
But if you're like someone comes to you is like, hey, I like what you do. I would like you to do this work for me. How much would that be? And you give them a price and it is exorbitantly high. They're not going to go away and find someone else. They're going to be like, oh, could we maybe do something there? Could we like talk about this?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
like,
Can we change the scope of work? Can we, whatever it is?
how can
Once
we make this
people have
more profitable, for
once
me, but
people have
also
made an investment in the relationship,
meeting you, talking to you, telling you what the scope of
telling you
work
about
is.
their business, like they're not going to walk away the first time you quote.
So
something out of their budget.
don't be afraid of, saying a price too high and people running off. Like that is not something. There's another.
Yeah, no, I just was involved in a conversation where a new client account that I'm going to be working on, they had a freelancer who charged them $8,000 for something that just like never came to fruition. And it's like our standard charge for what we're proposing is like 5,000, but we were like, let's ask for 6,500. And since they just spent $8,000 and got nothing, and they jumped on it right away, and it was like, oh, like Great.
Yeah, you also got to know who you're talking to. Like there are, like you said before, there are organizations where they don't have a lot of money. So what I've done in the past is sometimes I give discounts, but the important part of this is to always note the discount on your invoice so they don't forget. So if you give a discount, your invoice says 5,000 minus 10%, and then you know what I mean. So yeah. You don't want them to forget. We actually have more questions. This is awesome.
Yay.
Oh yeah, that is a good comment actually. People connect price with skill. So if you price yourself too low, people might think you're not very skilled, and that is an incredibly good point, Eva. Thank you so much for bringing that up.
Extremely good.
Again, leads me back to Fiverr and Upwork. The stuff there, what is its worth?
Well, and also like, if my experience is if you are working for somebody who is not technical, they really lack the ability to really understand the technical challenges of the work, or like how fantastically terrible their code base is and why you can't get them what they want in the time that they want it. Like, if you set your rates low, they're going to look at that and be like, that was a junior person who didn't know what they were doing. And like, they're going to potentially post a negative review of you. And if you come in with confidence and your rates reflect your skill, it sets the bar a little bit differently for those conversations.
Also, you have to consider that what you get is not what you get, because overhead, as we said before, you can Google this how to set your rates, like how much to take off. Like you could figure out your hourly take home or whatever if you're talking about hourly rates or day rates or whatever, and then you need to figure out how much in taxes you're going to pay. And then also consider all the stuff that goes unpaid, like emails, communication, trying to get people to tell you what the scope of the project actually is, all that stuff. You got to add that on top. So there are a few good websites that help you do that. Where you can do that.
And that's also something just to keep in mind. Like sometimes people, there's, you can charge by project, like by the project deliverable or by the hour. And
I have thoughts on that, actually.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm a fan of charging hourly when the scope is not clearly defined.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
So if you get the feeling that people don't know what they're going to need, then maybe you don't want to work with them. But if you don't know what they're going to need, or if it's kind of for the ongoing work, it makes sense to set hourlies or day rates. Sorry. And also when you're just starting out and you don't know how long things will take you.
Yeah.
That's also a helpful way to do it. But once you know how long things take you, you figure out how long it's going to take you. Then you put a nice big buffer on top, because something's always going to go wrong. And if you, in the end, don't take as long, your imaginary hourly has just gone up, which is what I really like about project-based pricing.
Yeah.
But to do project-based pricing, you need to really know the scope, and you need to know how you work, like how long it'll take you.
And I would say that like this is more so when I'm working on something that's like very technical as compared to something that's more of a writing assignment. If I'm going to be writing a lot of code, that's something I think I want to be paid hourly for, because it is a lot harder to
Things go wrong.
And like, let's say somebody's like, oh, I just want this really simple, Python Flask app to like call this one API endpoint and show a graph of the data. Cool. Like I know how long that's going to take me, and it's not very long. If you are working on something where you don't know the technology very well, or where there's an existing code base that you don't get exposure to before you start, those are situations where you need to be transparent about what you actually know and what you don't know. Like if you're like, well, I'm going to be working in a new to me framework, say that. Here's my experience with learning new frameworks. Like, I'm confident I can do this. But that should, if they are willing to work with you, then they should be willing to pay you for your time, not just for the deliverable.
And I don't know, maybe your hourly would then be lower than the hourly of
Yeah,
someone who
it might
already
be.
has
Like,
that
if
skill
you're
set.
going to be
But like,
deriving real benefit from it, like you're going to get some hands-on exposure to something new that you're going to carry with you into other projects. Absolutely.
yeah. So
Your
a lot
hourly.
of things go into pricing, like who are you doing this work for? How clear is the scope? Do you know how long it'll take you? What are you getting out of it? Are you learning something new through it? Then you have a benefit aside from money from it, and so on. So there's a lot of things that go into that. We actually have a question that fits in here quite nicely. It's a pretty long question. Hold on. So Yushi's asking, do we need to be experienced before beginning our freelance journey, or can we do freelance and then learn by freelancing? For example, if you just learned a language and you want to propose your service as a freelancer, is it good to practice more? Or should we be sure about our skill set before doing that? I'm going to put that away because I can't see you again. Personally, I would never sell my work, sell my services for a skill that I'm not sure I at least have enough that a bit of research won't make me able to cover it. Like, I used to work as a copywriter, and then I started stretching my wings a bit into consulting. And I did that after already injecting some of that consulting work into my copywriting work before. So it wasn't like I just suddenly offered a new service thinking, oh my God, I don't know if I can do this. Although, I mean, imposter syndrome is no joke. I think that every time. Like today before this live stream, I thought I can't do this. Turns out I can. But like, with coding, I'm also new to coding. So there's a lot you can learn. Like if you got the basics and you know how to Google and you know who to ask, I feel like
it really depends, man.
But also, if you like want to keep learning, my personal idea is that the best way is from other people, and by working with other people. When you freelance, you do it alone.
Right. Yeah, and that was something I actually thought we should might be something to talk about for people who are just considering getting into freelance work. Is it can be really lonely. It can be very isolating. And you need to be very proactive and intentional about finding support and finding community. And that's especially true if you are going to be kind of going out on a limb and trying to learn something new on the job. Like, I would not go in with confidence that I could learn something entirely new.
Just for the job. No.
Just for the job. No. Without knowing that I had somewhere to turn if things went really sideways.
Yeah. No, that's...
That said, I'm at a point in my career and my technical growth and whatnot where I feel confident like trading on my expertise as a developer educator and as a writer and as a general technical person, that if somebody comes to me and is like, hey, we need this piece of content or we need this content series using this technology that maybe you haven't worked with before, so long as I know some pieces of it, and so long as like a little bit of research tells me like this is tractable, I'm good with it. So,
but that's something entirely different than writing production code, for example. So
yeah, totally different than writing production code. I would definitely not want to get involved, especially if you don't get an opportunity to know who else is working on it. Because that's one thing about consulting compared to working in-house somewhere, is you don't get that same opportunity to meet the team,
learn from others,
like you don't get the same sense of the culture of the place before you start. And other consultants may or may not be interested, probably not be interested in putting in the time to help you ramp up. So you need somewhere else to turn.
So I think if you want to start freelancing, but you have just learned to code, and usually you asked the question was with me in the web dev, so in the web dev cohort, so that's we know HTML and CSS, and we've done it for 6 weeks. I think open source would be a great way to get started, where you can get help from people and learn to work with others on code.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But like, if you want to do your buddy's website with the skills that we have now, that is something that I would be like, yeah, like I'm probably gonna do my mother-in-law's website because I can figure that out, you know. It's not like she's gonna pay me. but we stayed at her house for free, so I guess that's fair enough.
Right.
So yeah, so it depends what kind of jobs you're gonna go for with what little experience you have. Of course, the best way to gain experience is on the job, but you might actually be better off. I can't believe I'm saying this, but you might be better off just finding a job, employment as a junior, which I know is super hard.
It is really hard.
It's even harder now than it used to be. And just maybe if it's just part-time, and gain some skills there, and then maybe, like I did, segue into freelancing. If that is, like, if you want to be your own boss and that's your ultimate long-term goal, then I would recommend going that way. Also because you learn more about, I don't know how old you are usually, but you learn more about how companies work, how corporations work, how businesses work, and that gives you an edge when you're talking to them from the other side as a freelancer. So I think that's my advice, which I'm not sure if it's good advice, but
I don't know. It's a tough one.
I've got some questions from someone who wanted to come but didn't know if she could make it. I don't know if she's here, but I wrote them down before. And I think it might be, so this is a good one. Do you prefer working with clients on an ongoing basis or doing gigs? I think we've both done both, right?
Yeah.
I feel like a good mix is the best thing. Because like an ongoing contracting client gives you a certain steady-ish income that you can rely on. And if you get short-term gigs, that's like play stuff. So those were always the like sort of experimental
build your relationship with them. The work becomes lower stress. Like it's easier to.
And they're gonna refer you if they like your work so much that they're keeping them on. So this is
part of why I really like what I do now, where I work. Most of my work, I'm a contractor with basically with an agency, and then the agency like places me on different client projects. And I have my own clients as well, but like that's most of what I do now. I really like that because I have some ongoing client relationships where I'm doing something for them every month, sometimes a couple things in a month. I get to do things that build on each other. Like it's a really good relationship, but I get bored super easily. And I really like that I'm kind of constantly jumping in on other things.
It's the best of both worlds, I guess.
Yeah. Like I'll do work to like, set up a client account for a new freelancer where it's like I'm doing a little bit of research, writing some outlines, like fleshing out content plans or, app architecture diagrams or whatever. And it's just, I really like the kind of like getting to jump in and out of different stuff a lot. It does tiring though, man. Like it gets really
like it's definitely something that I would warn people of. Like freelancing, even if you have ongoing gigs, it is you gotta be on the ball. You gotta be like, oh, do I need to up my rates? Am I gonna get enough work this month? Something that like some sales asked.
if you go on vacation, you're like,
if I go on vacation, I work harder the 2 weeks before and the 2 weeks after, so I don't suffer income loss.
Because it's not like paid time off.
Nope.
and
when you're sick, there is no sick leave. I mean, many countries there is no sick leave either way. But for instance, in Europe, you have sick leave. I have sick leave from the 43rd day, which I pay for dearly. But it only kicks in after 43 days, after which time I will already have lost a month and a half of income. I can't afford that.
I can't. It's like,
how are they expecting?
People have cancer and don't take 43 sick days. Like, I don't even understand.
Only after that time continuously.
Yeah.
When I had unfortunately got COVID in July, I didn't work for a bit and I completely lost my income. And that is stress. That is like, if you're financially in a good situation and that lost income is not an issue for you, great, fantastic. But if that isn't the case and that is going to hurt you, then that is also not a great time, like a great way to recover from any kind of illness.
Yeah, it can be, again, like kind of going with that isolation thing. Like there's additional stress in being self-employed that if you have a job that you like on a team that you like in a good company that treats you well, like that's like anti-stress, right? It's like, oh, I didn't get as much done at work this week. No big deal. My boss understands. Like, I can even go see a therapist through corporate wellness.
Our bosses are usually the hardest bosses, aren't they?
But, for me, it's like, oh, crap, my kids have so much stuff going on this week. Like, I still have to get stuff done for the clients. And my clients aren't going to be like, oh,
I mean, to be fair, my clients are my main client, at least they're pretty good about it. It's like, it's okay if you want to take time off. It's like, I can't afford to take time off financially. But I do have one rule, which is I don't work weekends and I don't usually work nights. And I communicate that early on to my clients.
By contrast, like that's part of what I really like is because
like if I want to, I will, but it'll be on my terms and my client will never know. Like the email will be scheduled for Monday morning.
No, right. Like I'm not sending emails at that time, but like if I have a project where I really need to focus, I really like that. Like I could take the afternoon off to do stuff with my kids and then work on it at night and nobody is any wiser. And like,
so like, but there are a lot of clients who will try to like get things after hours from you or on weekends. I
really encountered that, but
I haven't, because I shut that shit down at the very beginning. I was like, yep, this is how I work. These are my conditions. Just so you know, I don't usually work weekends and I don't work nights unless it's my own decision for, I don't know. I went swimming during the day and then I did it at night. Yeah, that's my problem. But if you want that overnight, it's not going to happen. If you want something super quickly, there's a rush fee, things like that. So I have very clear lines and rules, like boundaries. But that is also something that I can afford because I have made a name for myself and also because I have had all the experiences that led to me having these boundaries. So it's kind of,
I wonder if that's more true because you're working in something that's a little bit more PR adjacent. I feel like the time frames for the work I do are really never pushing that kind of stuff. I don't know.
It's mostly that. So with my ongoing clients, it's usually not a problem. It's mostly a problem when someone has needed like a website copy and a startup, they're at that point where they need to start thinking about their tone of voice and all of that, need website copy, they need panic. They think about it way too late. They ask around way too late. By the time they get to me, for them, it's super urgent. I'm like, see, I don't do magic. Like I do my magic, but I don't do magic with time.
I don't do magic on demand.
And also not time magic. So it's gonna take a moment,
Yeah.
And that's usually where the pressure comes in, or them, not I had a client where they were like, "Oh, I'm going to send you something. I'm going to need something July 10th, July, August." I hadn't heard from her. I knew by the time she was going to message me, it was going to be urgent. So I slapped a rush fee on it. Then it wasn't urgent anymore all of a sudden. That's something I've noticed. As soon as you slap a rush fee on it, all urgency goes away. Or if it doesn't, they just pay it because they know they fucked up, you know. Which is yeah. There are no questions in the chat right now, but I've got something from Domi from before. Hold on a second. This is actually an interesting one. I'm gonna put it up the way she wrote it because I think it's a nice way of phrasing it. If you're relying on word of mouth, but are an autistic introvert who is weird as fuck, doesn't mean you're doomed. I am an outgoing ADHDer, which comes with its own problems. But my main advice because word of mouth relies on networking and then doing good work. So obviously do good work and networking. I always tell people, a lot of people are like, oh, networking, it's so gross. I hate it. I hate myself when I'm doing it. Don't think of it as networking. Just think of it as talking to people. That's, at least for me, that's what I always do when I go to events. I talk to people and I'm genuinely interested to learn more about them and to learn what they're doing and to learn who they are. That makes it easy for me to remember them. That makes it easy for them to remember me because I'm someone who showed genuine interest in an event full of, you know, salesy people. Just don't think of it as networking. Just think of it as talking to people and getting to know people. And also I try to, but this is something that is a privilege that comes with time spent successfully as a freelancer, building your brand and building your business, which is, I don't work with bigots, and my website says so. Like, I have an actual disclaimer on my website that says I do not work with bigots because I don't want to, and I don't have to at this point anymore. That's something I'm grateful for. You might have to at the beginning, but down the road, I just recommend finding clients that you click with, especially for long-term relationships where you get repeated work from them or ongoing work. Find people who don't care that you're an autistic introvert who is weird as fuck. that's kind of my thought here. I mean, but I don't know.
I feel like I have clients who are autistic introverts who are weird as fuck.
Perfect. Yeah.
You know, like this is an industry full of weird people.
Exactly.
And nothing rubs other developers the wrong way like being a super polished salesperson, right? It's way better to just be your weird ass self and like,
yeah, authenticity for the win.
Be genuinely interested in other weird ass people. Like, yeah, the introversion thing is tough. Some kinds of forums are going to be a lot more difficult for people who are really introverted. So,
there's a lot online these days, so you can make use of that.
Absolutely. Online meetups, terrific.
Online communities,
stuff, small groups, like figure out what's comfortable for you. You don't have to do it all. Like nobody has to do it all. Yeah. I am not real big on social media. Some people are, and that's how to get a lot of
clients. I had to beg you to add an image to your Twitter account before I tagged you.
I know. But for some people, that's how they get all their clients is on. They post about their work on Twitter, and people follow up and DM them and send them more work. Yeah.
For me, it was personal in-person events that worked really well. It might be a mix for you. I don't know. Yeah.
I've gotten work from other parents
exactly. Like people you already know might have work for you. That's so what you can start with when you start is just let people you already know, let them know that you're now doing this and that you're for hire and maybe they know someone and so on.
Yeah. And, find somebody you trust who has experience in the industry to check, just sort of be a little check and be like, you might be being a little too weird right now. We all need that sometimes.
Yeah, yeah. Some of us have partners for that. Am I being too weird? No, it's fine. Okay.
You need to stop talking
You know, the signing, like signs in the background. Yeah, no. I don't know. Talk to the people you already know, because some of them might be future clients, and do good work and show your work. Don't hide it.
Yeah.
Set up a website. Put everything together. Um, people also ask often, like, oh, like, how do I need to like create my brand, whatever. Like, I literally do branding workshops with people, but if you're just starting out, I would just suggest being authentically yourself, but in a slightly polished professional version. That's kind of how I've rolled. Like, I'm not gonna pretend to be someone else, because then when I walk in a room, those two things are not gonna fit. Like my website, pretending I'm this like super polished person, and then I walk in, you're gonna be like, what else is this person lying about, you know? So just be yourself.
Yeah. If there's something you are weirdly passionate about, lean into it, because somewhere there's someone who is building a business on that. Like, yeah. I mean, maybe don't lean in too hard, depending on what it is.
Lean on
But,
in
like,
on it a
I
little.
don't pretend to be super into video games or sci-fi, or I don't know, some of the like traditional like techie things. Like, I like to read Russian literature, and like, you want to talk to me about the Russians? Like, I'm here for it. And that kind of authenticity is that's your biggest asset.
I have a good example for that. So I'm a wild swimmer, which is something I will always talk about to anyone if they let me. But I used to swim in a pretty big group in Edinburgh, because Scotland has a very big wild swimming community. And two people of this group, one of them is a journalist, the other one is a photographer. They met through wild swimming, and they've now put out the second book, both of them very successful, about wild swimming. The first was wild swimming in Scotland, the other one was wild swimming in Ireland. So you never know where you'll meet the people that'll like be the key to success for you. Like, people aren't the key, but like that'll lead there somehow.
Yeah, that'll be the
So don't hide what you're passionate about, because like Julia said, that might be where you meet the person or the people that are also passionate about that and that are building a business, or you build a business together,
and
like
don't be
these two
afraid to
did.
say, like, I'm really not interested in this, like, but I know somebody who is. Can I put you in touch with them? Like, it's much better not to pretend to know something or be something that you aren't. If you can pivot and just make yourself a valuable resource in the sense of like being a connection to somebody else,
Yeah,
then people will remember you.
that's always something I always do. Like, I always connect other people
Yeah.
when I can, because
And I don't, it's not
pay
like
it
I
forward.
do that because I'm trying to like
No,
build
you
a
pay it
reputation in
forward.
business.
You pay
Like,
it
it's
forward.
something, yeah, you pay it forward. You do it because like you want other people to be successful.
Exactly.
And like be able to do the things they want to do.
Exactly. We
Yeah.
actually do have one more question.
Cool.
Do you have any recommendations for freelancing communities? By the way, if there are any more questions, please type them now. I feel like we're winding down. So, do you have any recommendations for freelancing communities? Phew. The experience I've personally had with freelancing communities that are specific to freelancing is that everyone's always in competition with each other. So I would say go with content. Go to your tech communities, go to your special interest communities, go to your, I don't know, if you're a tabletop RPG player, go there.
And professional communities that include freelancers,
That's
but
fine.
right, like I'm pretty
Like
active.
business networks that are sometimes locally.
I'm pretty active with Write the Docs. which is a primarily online community for technical writers of all kinds. And there's plenty of freelancers, and there are people, and then there's people who are hiring managers at big companies, and it's kind of all across the board. I've never been to one of their conferences because of the pandemic.
Conferences are also a good place to talk to people if you can afford to go.
As someone who,
I mean, it depends on the size of them.
depending on the day, feels like an introvert. I'm not crazy about conferences.
Fair.
Kind of a germaphobe. Like, I don't know.
Okay, fair enough. But yeah, so like freelancing focus communities, I find are always a place where people just one up each other. It's difficult, but like local business chamber of commerce, like if you live in like small towns, they usually have a chamber of commerce where small business people get together. That would be a fantastic way to, like, I don't know, say you do front end, you do websites, web design for people. That's a great way to get clients. Like the whether it's I don't know, a boutique or the local cobbler or whatever, you know what I mean? Like these are all small. Do cobblers even exist anymore? I don't know, but those are all small businesses that can use your services. So yeah, go to those things.
General, like the university that I went to has a
Yes, good idea.
pretty active like women's alumni network.
If you're from a marginalized community, go to that community obviously as well. I'm in a few trans networks, etc. Not primarily for business, but just
no, my partner has been involved with WeCode. I think that's the name of it.
I think I've heard of that. There's also things like Women Who Code, who are explicitly non-binary inclusive. There are
WeCode.
Since Eva's here, Jace include.
WeCode is the Women Engineers Code Conference, but it's women and non-binary
people. Yeah. So I think those are the best places to find the support you need. Talking to other freelancers, I've mostly, especially if the freelancers in exactly my field, the only time I found that really helpful is to exchange info about red flag clients. Brilliant. Love them for that. And also, like, if you can get them to talk about it, pricing. If they're willing to talk about their rates, that is something that can be really helpful. I always encourage people to talk about their rates because that is how non-cis men get better pay.
My sense is that people are more willing to talk about their rates in communities that aren't explicitly freelance communities, though. Like, again, like I've seen much more open conversations on Write the Docs about within the freelancers Slack channel than I have, in
specifically explicitly freelance communities. Yeah, same. Cool. Yeah. Is there anything you would like to add at the end or something? Like, I don't know.
I don't think so.
Any like expectations versus reality? I don't know, when you're like, oh, I'm gonna be freelance, it's gonna be like this.
I don't know if I had any expectations when I started. Like I said, I thought it was going to be just something I did while I interviewed for other jobs. And I still, like, my long-term plan is like, I would like to find something somewhere in-house at some point, in the right company, in the right tech stack, the right community. Yes. But it's like, for me, freelancing is the way to like figure out what I really want in the long run, and then continue to grow professionally and personally, like, so that if and when I ever find that position, it's going to be a really good fit. So I get all kinds of recruiters contacting me all the time for all kinds of stuff. And I would say I respond to maybe about like 1 in 4 of them and do an informational interview for half of those. And most of the time it's like we mutually are like, that's probably not the best fit, but like, thanks for talking with me. It was really interesting to get to know about your company, like follow you on LinkedIn. Like, don't get into freelancing thinking that you're going to pay up, that you're going to make a mint right off the bat. But you don't have to do it forever either. Like
I'm at the point where I'm ready to get out because of the overhead here in Germany, because it's just exhausting.
Yeah, it doesn't.
And also for me, when I started, it was kind of freelancing was because I couldn't find any good companies where I wouldn't feel like shit after 3 months. Freelancing was a way for me to make my own rules.
This being my third career, like I know a lot about what I don't want.
A bunch of half careers, I guess, but same. And yeah, I have a portfolio
why,
career.
like I feel like this is just sort of a very slow path towards finding something that's going to be really good. And I think everybody is very understanding of that when I talk to them, including the principal consultant at our agency, who's like, that's great, like you do good work for us while you're here. Like,
yeah, I think like freelancing can be a thing for now that gets you out of a pickle because you find yourself unemployable because you're neurodivergent and you haven't found the right company. Freelancing can be the thing that you want to do forever, and then like me, you find out that you might not want to do it forever because at some point you want sick leave and holidays. Or freelancing is the kind of thing where you can actually build a business that depends on what you're in. I can't scale. I'm just me and my skills. I cannot scale that.
I think that's one thing,
but other things are scalable, and that then it has good long-term options. So it can be.
I like sort of have ambitions someday of like, oh, wouldn't it be cool to like build a business where I employed other people? But I'm like, oh, dude, like that, I don't think I want to do that. Like,
first of all, I would have to clone myself to find the exact same skill set that I have, because that's what my clients want.
Yeah, my father-in-law has been a consultant for like management consulting for years, and he has tried everything under the sun to like transition the business in some way where he is not the only asset. But that is one thing about consulting, is like you are the asset, and that it can be tiring.
I think maybe that doesn't sound so positive, but I think it's a good cautionary tale to end on. Even that freelancing can be anything you need it to be. You just need to be realistic about it, and research, get information, ask people when you're stuck who have more experience, find a mentor, get people to bounce things off and get feedback from. You can also find both of us on Twitter, although Julia is less active there. Where can people find you?
On it. Although why I chose to suddenly like invest in my Twitter presence on the same day that Elon Musk bought Twitter.
Yeah. Where else can people find you? Is LinkedIn?
I'm always on LinkedIn. That's probably the best.
So it's Julia Seidman. Ramon says, one thing I've learned to do is share that knowledge and lower the barrier. Yes, I think this is why we're doing this, because we want to share the knowledge. Find us on Twitter. Tell us how it's going with your budding freelance careers. This thing should be up on Twitch still once we end the broadcast, so you can send it to people, and in a few days I will put it up on YouTube and publish the link on Twitter and LinkedIn and wherever. But because I'm everywhere. Including TikTok. Right.
TikTok, really? Are you on
No,
TikTok?
but just because it's dopamine for my brain. It's like,
Would you post on TikTok?
I do sometimes,
Oh,
but mostly
wow.
about like trans stuff. But like
That makes sense.
passively using it is dopamine for my brain, and I loves it. And I'm not gonna take it away from myself. Right. Thank you so much, Julia. This was awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. My pleasure.
Have a good day, because it's morning for you. I'm gonna go have dinner now. Well, morning-ish. Everyone else, wherever you are, have a good whatever is coming next
Have
for
a good
you.
whatever.
Thank you so much for coming.
Bye.
Bye.